Why did my best friend leak my journal online? The photo went viral in less than 2 hours. By third period, whispers trailed behind me like smoke. A screenshot of one of my journal entries had been posted anonymously, capturing a painfully vulnerable paragraph where I confessed feeling invisible, even around my closest friend, and now it was being circulated through group chats, reposted on finstas, dissected on story reactions. I had no clue who posted it, but I recognized the handwriting, mine. The comments were the worst part. Some were laughing, others were worried, quoting sentences completely out of context with faux concern. One girl commented, "Damn, she's dramatic." Another added, "Isla's best friend, right? Guess not anymore. Isla." She sat 2 rows ahead in biology, pretending to take notes, her highlighter flicking back and forth over an unmarked page. She hadn't looked at me once. My fingers clenched around the phone. I didn't want to believe it. Not her. Not Isla. We'd been friends since we were 9. She knew everything. She was the only one I ever trusted with that journal, and I trusted her because she swore on our attic pact, that she'd never show anyone, even if we stopped being friends. I didn't even remember handing her the journal, but I had? Once. Sometime last fall. It was late, we were sitting on her bedroom floor. I'd been crying. She asked to read something. Just to understand you better? So I let her flip through it. I even felt comforted, stupidly thinking it might bring us closer. And now my words, thoughts I'd never say aloud, were a meme. By lunchtime, I'd locked myself in a stall in the girls' bathroom. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Instead, I scrawled through the post again and again, as if rereading it would somehow make it disappear. A knock on the stall door made me freeze. "It's me," Isla's voice said softly. I didn't answer. She paused. "I didn't post it." "Still." I said nothing. I think someone hacked my drive. I didn't mean for this to happen." My mouth tasted like metal. "You took photos?" Silence. She didn't even try to lie. "I was scared you'd forget. That we'd drift, and I'd lose the part of you that wrote those things. I don't know, okay? I didn't show anyone. Someone must have." I flushed the toilet to cut her off and opened the door. Our eyes met, but I couldn't read her expression. Guilt, regret, maybe all 3. "I need space," I said, stepping past her. As I walked down the hallway, I didn't realize I was still clutching my phone until I saw the screen. Another tag notification. Another reshared story. The caption read, "Gwest journaling's not always so private." The pain wasn't sharp. It was dull, lingering, like the aftershock of an injury you know won't heal clean. I turned off my phone. Outside, a cold wind rushed down the hallway, the kind that smells like late fall, brittle leaves and sour rain. And just like that, the memory of that attic pact flooded back. 2 kids, 1 flashlight, 1 old shoelace each tied around our wrists, swearing, "Never betray." Ever. I touched my wrist. Nothing there now, just pale skin warm from my sleeve. That was how the story truly began. But to understand what went wrong, how the person I trusted most became the one who hurt me, I need to go back 2 years. To the day I started writing things down, and to the girl who swore she'd never turn my words into a weapon. 2 years earlier, the journal began as nothing more than a dollar store notebook. Its cover was a soft gray, plain and untouched, the kind of thing you pass by without a second glance. I bought it on a whim after a rough day at school, not because anything dramatic had happened, but because everything felt like too much. I needed a place where thoughts could stretch out without being questioned, judged, or misunderstood. I remember sitting on my bed that evening, the notebook flat on my lap, pen hovering over the first page. It took longer than I thought to start writing, but once the ink touched paper, it didn't stop. Today felt like drowning in silence. That was the first line. It wasn't poetry, it wasn't even particularly clever, but it was honest, and once the first entry was done, something inside me relaxed, like I'd taken off a heavy coat I didn't know I'd been wearing. I wrote in it every night after that. Some entries were long letters to no one, others were bullet points of feelings I couldn't name. I didn't filter myself. I didn't hold back. It was the only place where I didn't need to explain why I cried in the library bathroom or why certain compliments made my stomach twist. And soon, it became more than just a notebook. It was my shadow self, all the things I never dared to say out loud, spilled into neat lines between margins. Isla found out about it 2 weeks after I started. She didn't read it at first. I didn't let her. But she saw me clutching it during lunch one day and asked, "What's that?" "Just a journal?" I said. "For what?" I shrugged. "Thoughts." Her curiosity didn't fade. She'd glance at it often, like it held secrets she wasn't allowed to touch. But she never pressured me. In fact, she started writing too. We made it a quiet routine, sitting in the library during free period, scribbling in our separate notebooks without speaking. I loved those moments, peaceful, wordless companionship. Eventually, I shared an entry. It was short, just 3 paragraphs about a day I felt small and unimportant, and how Isla's laugh was the only thing that made it better. When she read it, she smiled. You wrote about me? I nodded. She closed the journal gently and said, You write like you're whispering in someone's ear. That compliment stayed with me for months. From then on, she became the only person I trusted with certain pages, not all of them, never all, but the ones that felt safe enough to show someone who cared. We treated it like a ritual. Sometimes, on rainy weekends, I'd read aloud an entry and she'd lie across my bed listening with her eyes closed. Other times, she'd ask if she could flip to a random page and read silently. She always handled the journal like it was fragile. She even said once, "This feels sacred," like reading someone's dreams. I believed her. I never considered what it meant, the power she held by knowing so much about me, because back then trust was easy. Isla was my safe place, my forever friend. We did everything together, studied, binge, watched crime documentaries, shared playlists. She knew I hated orange, flavored anything. I knew she bit her nails when nervous. We were the kind of close that didn't need explanations. But around us, the world was shifting. Sophomore year was the year everything began changing. That was when Isla started auditioning for every school play. It was when she dyed her hair auburn for stage presence, and started talking about NYU drama programs. Her Instagram became a highlight reel of behind-the-scenes photos, cast party selfies, and cryptic quotes in captions. Meanwhile, I stayed the same. Quiet, observant, writing. I wasn't jealous at first, just confused. I missed her. She'd cancel study sessions last minute for rehearsals. Forget to reply to texts for days. When we did hang out, she seemed distracted, her phone always buzzing with group chats I wasn't in. One night after she got home from a cast meeting, she FaceTimed me. Her cheeks were flushed, eyes bright. "Wes, what?" she said. "Ems, Carol says I have real presence, like actual stage charisma." I smiled, tired but happy for her. "That's awesome." Then she added, "You should write something for me, like a monologue. Something deep. You're good at that?" I paused. "Maybe?" She tilted her head. "Don't you want people to hear your words?" "Not like that." She didn't understand. And I didn't have the words to explain that my writing wasn't meant for a stage. It was a private landscape, not a script for applause. That was the first time I realized we were starting to want different things. Still, I kept writing. The journal filled faster. And though I shared fewer pages with Isla, I still trusted her with what mattered most. I didn't know back then that seeds of change had already been planted. Seeds that would grow into something darker, something I couldn't have imagined, not from her. But they were there, I just wasn't ready to see them. The attic was our sanctuary. Tucked above Isla's grandmother's house, it smelled like cedarwood and mothballs, with one tiny circular window that let in golden dust beams every afternoon. That was where we built our world, the place no one else was allowed. We were 12 when we claimed it, 2 kids with scraped knees, tangled ponytails, and secrets blooming in our chests. There was an old trunk full of costumes, old yearbooks, and forgotten scarves. We made thrones out of sofa cushions, scribbled rules on poster board, and swore we were queens of some made-up land. That day, the day of the pact, it was raining. The kind of steady, endless rain that made everything feel like a whispered lullaby. We were curled up in our little corner under a blanket, flashlights in hand, chewing strawberry Twizzlers. Isla held up a frayed shoelace she'd found in the trunk. "We should make friendship bands?" I laughed. "That's a shoelace. It's symbolic," she argued. "We'd tie it on each other's wrists and make a vow." I played along, always did back then. "What vow?" Her eyes gleamed. "That no matter what happens, we don't betray each other. Ever?" My heart thumped. Something about the way she said it felt heavy, more serious than our usual games. "Like a blood pact," I whisper, half joking. "Stronger," she said. "Words last longer than blood." So we tied the shoelaces. Mine was blue and frayed. Hers was gray and knotted. We wrapped them around each other's wrists and fastened them with clumsy knots. Then, we spoke together, no secrets used against each other, no lies, no betrayals, even if we stopped being friends. That was the pact. We stayed in the attic for hours afterward, talking about who we wanted to become. I told her I wanted to write a book someday. She said she wanted to act on Broadway, but only if I was in the front row. "I'll wear a sparkly dress and make you cry from the stage," she said, smiling. "And I'll write a poem in the program notes," I replied. When we came down for dinner that night, our wrists were wrapped, and we felt invincible. No one else knew. That was the beauty of it, it was just ours. We wore those makeshift bracelets for nearly a year. Even when they started to unravel, we refused to take them off. Mine fell apart first. During gym class, it caught on the corner of a locker and snapped. I kept the thread in my pencil pouch for weeks. Isla's held on longer. But time has a way of chipping at promises. By the end of freshman year, we weren't queens in an attic anymore. We were 2 girls orbiting different lives. I stayed close to the page, she drifted toward the spotlight. Still, the memory of that pact stayed tucked in the back of my mind. Especially when doubt crept in, there were times I'd catch Isla laughing with her new castmates and feel a pang. But I'd remind myself she promised. We both did. And Isla might change, might forget plans or show up late, but she would never use my trust against me, not Isla. But the thing about pacts is, they don't dissolve with time, they only shatter. And when they do, the pieces cut deep. The attic still exists. I haven't been there in years, but I think about it sometimes. I wonder if the shoelace knots are still in that old trunk. I wonder if Isla ever looks at them and remembers what we swore. Or if she already forgot. By junior year, Isla had become someone people noticed. Not just because of her auburn hair or the way she wore eyeliner with a careless kind of grace, but because she moved through school like she belonged on a stage. People started looking when she walked into a room. Teachers praised her in class, students quoted her in captions. She was magnetic, a voice that could fill auditoriums, and I became the girl who stood just behind her. At first I didn't mind, I liked watching her shine. There was something comforting about seeing her succeed. Like proof that our little attic kingdom had grown up, that the girl I used to know was finding her light. But slowly, I started realizing something strange. She stopped inviting me to rehearsals, not just because of my schedule, but because, as she put it, you probably wouldn't get it. The cast vibes are weird lately. She started skipping our weekend coffee plans. Her texts became shorter, more rushed. Tired, sorry, she'd write. Or worse, nothing at all. Then came the show. She was cast as Juliet in the fall production, her dream role. I was genuinely happy for her. I even made her a small card, with a quote from the journal. "You were born to live in full light." She smiled when I gave it to her, but her phone buzzed a moment later and she glanced at the screen "Thank you." The moment passed. The card went into her bag. I never saw it again. The auditorium was packed on opening night. Her performance was electric. People cried. Teachers gave standing ovations. I clapped until my palms stung. Afterward, everyone crowded the backstage hallway. Isla emerged, eyes lit, laughing as friends hugged her, boys handed her flowers. Someone snapped a picture that would later get 300 likes. I waited near the corner, journal in my bag. I'd written a page I thought she'd love, about the first time we played Juliet and Romeo in the attic with costumes made from bedsheets. But when I approached, she was surrounded. She glanced at me briefly and smiled. "Oh hey, you made it." Of course I did. She was already turning back to someone else. "Did you see that final scene?" My voice cracked, but Miss Carol said it made it more real. I stood there for a few minutes longer, long enough to realize I didn't belong in that circle anymore. So I left. Later that night, she texted, "Thanks for coming, you're the best." And I stared at the screen for a long time, fingers hovering over the keyboard before I replied, "You were amazing." No emoji, no inside joke, just honesty in the simplest form. That was the night something shifted. I didn't cry. I didn't even write about it until 2 days later. But I felt the crack. A subtle fracture, like glass bending under pressure. It wasn't betrayal, not yet, just distance. Still, I clung to the journal, poured everything into it. I wrote about how proud I was, how much I missed our silent library sessions. I wrote about sitting in her grandmother's attic, pretending we were queens of a world that only needed 2 thrones. And most of all, I wrote about the worry blooming in my chest. The fear that maybe, just maybe, Isla didn't see me the same way anymore. But what scared me most wasn't losing her spotlight. It was losing her entirely. That month, we barely saw each other outside of school. She messaged sometimes, but the warmth was missing. Her texts felt rehearsed, like lines in a play she wasn't fully present in. One afternoon, I overheard her laughing in the stairwell with 2 girls from the theater club. "She's sweet," one of them said, "but, like, too intense. Always writing. It's kind of creepy." Isla didn't correct her. She just laughed. And in that moment, I knew something important had changed. But I still didn't stop writing. I still held on to the pact, still believed, somewhere deep down, that the girl who tied a shoelace around my wrist and called it sacred couldn't truly mean harm. I had no idea that the journal I poured my heart into was already compromised, that Isla, the girl who used to swear loyalty under attic dust and flashlight beams, had taken something meant to be safe and made it fragile. And when trust becomes fragile, it only takes one small shift to make it shatter. It was the day of the audition when things truly cracked. Miss Carol announced they were holding open auditions for the spring showcase, a modern adaptation of Antigone set in a dystopian future. Everyone knew Isla was going for the lead. She had the range, the presence, the reputation. She'd been hunting about it for weeks, practicing lines in the cafeteria, slipping into character mid-conversation. But I auditioned too. I didn't plan to. Honestly, I only went because my English teacher nudged me, saying, "You've got a voice. Use it." I had no expectations. I wasn't chasing a spotlight. I just wanted to try something that scared me. And I didn't tell Isla. It wasn't a secret. It just didn't come up. The audition was a blur. Cold stage lights, unfamiliar lines, shaky breath. But when I finished reading the monologue, one I had written myself improvised on the spot, the room was quiet. Miss Carroll leaned forward. That was haunting. Thank you. I left thinking nothing of it, just relief, maybe a little pride, the kind that stays warm in your chest but doesn't need to be shown off. 2 days later, the cast list went up outside the drama room. Antigone me, Ismin Isla. There was a strange silence around the list, a ripple of confused murmurs. Some looked at me like I'd broken a rule. I saw Isla reading the list in the hallway. Her hand was on the paper, fingers tracing the names. She didn't turn around when I walked up. Hey, I said, tentative. She exhaled through her nose. So you did audition? You didn't think to tell me? I paused. It wasn't a big deal. It clearly was, she said, voice flat. You got the lead. I didn't know what to say. The joy I'd felt earlier shriveled into guilt. You're a better writer, she continued, eyes still on the list. I guess now you're the better actress, too. That's not? She finally looked at me, her face was unreadable. No, it's fine. Congrats. And then she walked away. I didn't chase her, part of me wanted to. But another part, the one still sore from all her recent distance, let her go. Over the next few days, the coldness between us grew. She was polite during rehearsals, always professional, but gone were the sidelong glances, the shared smirks, the whispered critiques. We didn't ride home together. We didn't talk backstage. And when she did speak to me, it was with a calm precision that felt more like acting than real life. I wrote about it, of course. Poured every confusing feeling into the journal. I didn't blame her. I just missed her. I missed the Isla who would have laughed it off, teased me for my stuttering monologue, stolen my fries at lunch, and said, let's run lines together all night. Instead, there were whispered conversations between her and the other actors. Quick glances that stopped when I entered the room. She posted pictures from rehearsals and cropped me out. I told myself I was imagining it, but deep down I wasn't. A week later, something even stranger happened. I left my journal in the green room, just for a few minutes. I had tucked it into my bag, but the zipper stuck and I was rushing to a blocking session. When I returned, it was on the table. Slightly shifted, I checked the bookmark. It was off by 2 pages. Nothing was missing, but something felt disturbed. Touched, I asked around, casually. Did anyone see a notebook here earlier? No one admitted to anything. Isla didn't even look up when I asked. That night, I rewrote the last 3 entries in a new notebook, just in case. But I didn't stop using the original. Not yet, because I still believed she wouldn't that. She couldn't do that? Could she? The thought haunted me, especially after rehearsal one day, when I caught Isla watching me as I packed my things. Her eyes lingered just a second too long on my journal, and then she looked away. It wasn't what she did. It was what she didn't say. And that silence, heavy, familiar, aching, felt louder than any betrayal. It started with a message request. Late one night, as I scrolled through my phone in bed, I noticed a new DM on my private Instagram. The account was anonymous, no posts, no followers, no bio. The message read, "Hope your best friend knows what you really think of her." My throat tightened. I clicked on the profile. Nothing. I checked the message again. Just that one line. No context, but full of implication. My journal's contents hadn't been published anywhere. Not yet. But something about that message felt too close. I tried to sleep, but couldn't. The next morning, I wrote about it in the journal. I logged the message word for word, ending the entry with, "Paranoia tastes like copper in the back of my mouth." Then, more messages followed. The next one came 2 days later. This time it quoted something I had written months ago, a line about feeling like I fade into the wallpaper whenever Isla is in a room. It wasn't verbatim, but close enough to freeze me in place. I stared at the screen for minutes. I hadn't shown that entry to anyone, not even Isla, at least not directly, unless she had read it. Somehow, on her own, I approached her at school that day, heart hammering. "Have you ever gotten weird DMs from fake accounts?" I asked. She blinked. "What kind of DMs?" "Like creepy stuff, quoting personal things." She frowned, adjusting her bag strap. "No, why?" I watched her carefully, looking for any flicker of recognition. Nothing. Her expression was neutral, her tone casual. "Never mind," I said. "Just thought I'd ask." She nodded slowly. "You okay?" I wanted to scream. "No, I'm not okay. Someone's leaking things that sound like the inside of my brain, and you're the only person who's ever read those words." Instead, I just nodded. "Yeah." She gave a half smile. "People are weird online, probably just some troll, maybe." But that night, I received another message. This one said, "Funny how the girl who writes so much never says anything out loud." And the next day, my locker had a note inside, no envelope, no name, just a single torn sheet of paper with the words, "Be careful who you trust." I knew that handwriting, Illa's. I confronted her the next afternoon, outside the school after rehearsal. It was cold, the kind of sharp March wind that sliced through sleeves. "You left a note in my locker," I said. Her eyes narrowed. "What?" Don't play dumb. I didn't leave anything. I pulled out the paper. It's your writing, Isla. She looked at it. Blinked. I used to write like that. But it's not mine. I stared. Why would someone fake your handwriting? She looked away. I don't know. It was the way she said it, not defensive but tired. Worn, as if she was exhausted from holding something inside. We stood there, the air thick with unspoken things. Finally, she said, maybe someone's trying to mess with both of us. And I almost believed her. But later that night I remembered something. A few weeks ago Isla had posted a photo of her desk, a cute, aesthetic shot of her notebook, a candle, and a blurry laptop screen in the background. And there, just barely visible in the corner of the photo, was my journal, open. The entry exposed was one I'd never read aloud, never even referenced. It was about her, about how I felt small in her growing shadow, how I was scared of being discarded once she no longer needed me. I zoomed in. The words weren't readable, but the format, the spacing, it matched that page exactly. That post was up for less than 24 hours before she deleted it. Maybe no one noticed. Or maybe someone did. Someone who knew how to screenshot, crop, and share. I didn't sleep that night, and by morning my inbox had 3 new messages, all anonymous. All quoting fragments of thoughts that only existed in one place. My journal wasn't safe, and neither was my trust in Isla. It happened during the fire drill. A blaring alarm split the air during third period chemistry, sending everyone scrambling outside, coats barely zipped and phones clutched in cold hands. The parking lot buzzed with confused chatter and laughter, steam curling from open mouths as students bunched in haphazard lines. I stood near the edge, wrapped in my jacket, staring at Isla across the crowd. She was laughing at something one of the theater boys said, arms folded tightly, eyes bright. From where I stood she looked untouched, unbothered, but I was unraveling. I hadn't spoken to her in days. The messages had stopped abruptly the day after I confronted her. No more quotes, no more warnings. But the silence felt even louder, like a held breath before a scream. Then, a voice behind me said, "Hey, can I talk to you for a sec?" It was Mia, soft-spoken, always polite, the kind of girl teachers adored. She was in the art club, sat near me in English, and was one of those rare people who paid attention even when no one else did. I blinked. "Sir." We stepped aside, just behind one of the buses, away from the clumps of students. Mia shifted her weight, eyes darting nervously before she finally said it. "I saw Isla with your journal." I froze. "It was a while ago," she added quickly. "Before winter break, I think. She was in the green room during lunch. No one else was around. I was setting up canvases in the back closet and forgot my phone, so I walked back in and she had it open on her lap." My throat dried up. "Are you sure it was mine?" "It was the one with the gray cloth cover, right?" She was flipping pages fast. Like, not reading, just looking, maybe copying? I don't know. I couldn't breathe. "She didn't see me," Mia said. I left. I didn't think much of it until all those posts started happening, and then, she trailed off, her guilt clear. "I didn't want to cause drama, but I figured you should know." I looked down at my shoes, scuffed and damp from the slush. Everything inside me was shaking. "Thank you," I whispered. She nodded, then hesitated. "I'm sorry, I didn't know it would get so bad." I didn't blame her. I blamed myself for not seeing it sooner. The bell rang, signaling the all clear, and students began streaming back inside. I walked behind the crowd, numb and quiet, Mia's words replaying in my head on loop. Isla flipping through my journal, alone, unseen. I kept picturing it, her hands touching the pages I poured myself into, not with tenderness, not with love but calculation, extraction. And then using those words, my words, in whispers, in posts, in poison. I went home that day and didn't speak to anyone. I pulled the journal from its hiding spot and stared at it for a long time, hands trembling. Then I packed it into a shoebox, tied it shut with twine, and shoved it to the back of my closet. I didn't write that night, or the night after. But I did make a plan, because whatever this was, whatever Isla had become, I couldn't let it go on quietly anymore. I had to confront her, not with accusations, not with rage, with truth. The kind of truth that couldn't be misquoted or cropped into a meme. The kind of truth that once lived in a pact sealed under attic beams and dusty light. It was time to break the silence, even if it broke everything else too. The rooftop was empty except for the wind. At our school, the rooftop above the auditorium was technically off limits. A flat slab of tar and concrete accessible through an old, unmonitored maintenance stairwell. Isla and I had discovered it during freshman year, slipping through the metal door like urban explorers. Back then, we'd watch sunsets from up here, shared vending machine snacks, and imagined the sky as our second attic. Now, it was where I asked her to meet me. I chose sunset on purpose. The light fading, sky streaked with pinks and deepening blue. The last time we'd been up here together was almost a year ago. She arrived 5 minutes late, coat zipped high, hair wend, tangled. She looked cautious, wary, the way people do when they know a truth is coming. I stood by the edge, fingers curled around the rusted railing. I didn't turn until I heard her footsteps crunch behind me. You really picked this place, she said, not smiling felt right. She leaned on the rail beside me, leaving space between us. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I said, Mia saw you with my journal. She froze. I glanced over. Her face didn't twist with denial or outrage, just stillness, like she'd prepared for this moment. She told me you were alone? I continued, flipping through it during lunch. In the green room, Isla looked down at the concrete. Her voice, when it came, was quiet. I wasn't going to show anyone. But you did. She flinched. I don't know how it got out, she said quickly, too quickly. I only took a few photos. Just two, I don't know. To what? My voice cracked. She exhaled. To remember you. That stopped me. I felt like you were slipping away, she said, like we weren't us anymore. I thought if I kept a part of you, something real, something only I knew I could hold on. I stared at her. The wind tugged at our hair. Somewhere far below, a car honked, distant and irrelevant. You could have just talked to me. You were always writing, she said, almost bitterly. Always turning feelings into poems I wasn't allowed to read. And when you got the lead, it felt like you didn't need me anymore. That's not true. You didn't tell me you auditioned. Because I didn't think I'd get it. I wasn't trying to compete. Her hands gripped the railing now. I didn't mean for it to blow up. I didn't send it to anyone. I just uploaded it to my drive, for safekeeping. I thought it was private. I shook my head. You don't get to hide behind meaning well, Isla, you took something sacred, mine, and now it's everywhere. People quote me like I'm a joke. She looked at me then, eyes glossy. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did. A long silence followed. She wiped at her eyes, turning away. I think I ruined everything. My heart cracked in the silence. Why didn't you just say something? I asked, softer now. When you felt left out. When you felt like we weren't us. Because I was scared, she whispered. That if I said it out loud, it would make it real. She stepped back. I'm not who you think I am anymore. I know. We didn't hug, we didn't cry together. We just stood there. Two girls who once made sacred promises under attic light, now strangers on a rooftop too high for comfort. I didn't tell anyone what she said. Not the school, not the theater kids, not even Mia. But I never forgave her, either. That night, I walked home in the cold. My fingers felt numb, but my mind was on fire. She didn't deny it, she didn't justify it. But she didn't fix it either. And some betrayals, no matter how softly they're confessed, are still betrayals. The summons to the principal's office came the next morning. I'd barely stepped into homeroom when the intercom crackled to life. Can you please send the following students to the main office? Isla Morris Ann. A pause that stretched too long, and hey, my name. Every head turned toward me. I walked down the hallway with my heart in my throat, backpack still slung over one shoulder. Isla stood outside the office when I arrived, arms crossed, her face unreadable. She didn't look at me, I didn't speak to her. We were called in separately. Inside, Principal Harding sat behind her desk, glasses low on her nose, a stack of papers spread out in front of her like a battlefield. Beside her was Ms. Carroll, the drama teacher, and another staff member I didn't recognize, a tech specialist I later learned. They had a printout of my journal entry. The one that had gone viral. I froze. Where did you get that? It was submitted as part of a complaint. Principal Harding said. A student anonymously reported that private material was being circulated without consent. We've been investigating. I nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. The digital footprint led us to a school Google Drive account. Isla's account, she continued. A file with several scanned pages from what appears to be your journal was uploaded last month. That quieted everything in my head. We need to know? Harding said gently, whether you want to move forward with a formal report. This could result in disciplinary action. Possible suspension. I stared at the paper. My handwriting, my pain. She admitted, harass you. Was their intent to distribute? No, I paused. But she lied. She broke my trust. Ms. Carroll leaned forward. No one deserves what you went through. But this is your decision. I sat in that silence for a long time. Because deep down I knew Isla hadn't leaked it herself. Maybe she was careless. Maybe she saved it for herself and someone else found it. But she didn't post it. And yet, she was still responsible. She took the photos. She opened the door. And now I had a choice. Expose her to the system, or let her live with the shame she clearly already carried. I closed my eyes. I don't want her suspended, I said finally. I just want it to stop. Principal Harding nodded, expression neutral. We can enforce a no-contact agreement. She won't be allowed to speak to you, text you, or interact with you outside supervised rehearsals. If she violates that, we'll take it further. I nodded. That was enough. Before I left, Ms. Carroll pulled me aside. You're brave, she said. Don't let this make you afraid of your voice. I didn't answer. I didn't feel brave. I just felt tired. Outside, Isla was still waiting. She looked up as I passed her, mouth parting slightly as if she wanted to say something. But I didn't stop, not out of cruelty, out of self-preservation. That afternoon, the drama room was a minefield. Whispers everywhere. People had noticed the tension, the distance. The rehearsals were stiffer now, scenes recited without energy, lines half-hearted. We no longer shared eye contact on stage. At one point, Isla flubbed a line and muttered, "Sorry," too loud. I didn't react. The no-contact rule stood like a wall between us. She obeyed it, rigidly, almost like it was a relief to not have to speak anymore. That weekend, a new cast photo was posted to the school's social page. She wasn't in it, I was. And for once, I didn't feel guilty. But I didn't feel whole either. What no one tells you about betrayal is how quiet it becomes after the dust settles. The noise dies down. The messages stop. People move on. But you don't. Not right away. And some part of me, the part that once believed in attic packs and rooftop confessions, still wanted her to turn around, to explain everything perfectly, to make it all make sense. But she didn't, and I wouldn't ask her to. Because when someone uses your own words against you, forgiveness becomes a language you no longer speak. Winter fell like a curtain. The weeks after the office meeting blurred into a muted routine. Class, rehearsal, home. My phone stayed off more often than on. The chatter around me faded. I avoided the cafeteria, slipped through hallways like a shadow. My world had shrunk to just enough space for survival. The journal stayed locked in the shoebox. I didn't write, not because I didn't want to, but because the act of writing had become too loaded, too exposed. Every time I picked up a pen, I remembered how easily my words had been taken. Not just read, repurposed, turned into content, a joke, a weapon. So I let silence become my comfort. Outside, snow came in slow flurries, the kind that lingered in the air without settling. December passed in a haze. Then January, with its gray skies and biting wind. School closed once for a snowstorm, and I stayed in bed for almost 2 days, reading old books and trying not to think. The group chats had quieted. Most people had moved on to other drama. A breakup, a cheating scandal, a leaked math test. But a few still whispered, some stared too long in hallways. A couple of Instagram posts still floated with vague captions, barely veiled. I unfollowed almost everyone, deleted old photos, archived every post that had Isla in it. She never reached out, not once. Maybe the no-contact rule had become a comfort for her too. Rehearsals continued but felt hollow. We spoke our lines like ghosts. The chemistry was gone. The director shifted the blocking to limit our scenes together. One afternoon, Isla dropped a prop and apologized without looking at me. I watched her. Her smile, when it came, was different now. Strained. Not her usual effortless grin. It looked like it had been practiced in a mirror, like every emotion came with choreography. She wasn't thriving, but she wasn't sinking either. She was just surviving, like me. In February, I started seeing the school counselor, Ms. Rains. Warm voice, soft sweaters, a bowl of jelly beans on her desk. I didn't say much at first. Just sat there staring at the ceiling, but she waited. And eventually the words came, slowly, carefully. Not like in the journal. Just raw. She was my best friend, I said once. And now she feels like a stranger who knows all my secrets. Ms. Rains didn't interrupt. I trusted her with the deepest parts of me. And now I don't know if those parts are even mine anymore. That was the hardest part. Not the public humiliation. Not the online ridicule. But the quiet theft of something sacred. The feeling that the safest place I'd ever created had been broken into. And now I didn't know how to rebuild. By March, the snow began to melt. Just barely, tiny puddles formed at the edges of sidewalks, like small beginnings. That's when I started writing again, not in the old journal. That stayed locked away. I bought a new notebook, thicker, with a navy blue cover and pages that smelled like clean paper, not memory. This time I didn't name anyone, didn't write confessions, just fragments, observations, small, careful sentences. The sky is tired today. My voice is still here, just quieter. I don't owe anyone access. Each line was a step back toward myself. By spring break, I realized I hadn't thought about Isla in 3 days. It felt like breathing. And yet, sometimes, in quiet moments, she'd return. Not the Isla from the fire drill, not the girl who stole, but the one from the attic, the one who held a flashlight between us and whispered vows like spells. I missed her. But I missed me more. It had been exactly a year since the leak when I noticed the bracelet was missing. Not the original, that shoelace bracelet from the attic had disintegrated long ago. But a newer one, a subtle replacement I'd worn quietly ever since, a slim, navy thread with a single knot, tied months before everything fell apart. It had become a habit, something I rarely took off. A symbol I didn't talk about. Now it was gone. I don't know when it slipped away, maybe during gym, maybe while I was pulling on a sweater. But the absence felt symbolic, like a string had finally snapped. I sat on my bed that night, staring at the pale mark around my wrist where the bracelet used to be. It felt like my body was trying to remind me, you don't owe her anything anymore. A year ago, I might have cried over it. Now, I simply exhaled. The spring air had returned, soft, pollen, sweetened, humming with the promise of endings and beginnings. Rehearsals were done. The showcase had passed, quietly successful. I'd spoken my lines with conviction, made it through the final bow. Isla had transferred to tech crew halfway through the semester. Rumor was she asked for the change herself. We hadn't spoken in months, and somehow that had become normal. I found new friends. Eventually, not all at once, and not with the same urgency I once clung to Isla, but gently, slowly. A girl from art club who loved tarot cards and painted her shoes. A boy in biology who made terrible puns but listened like every word mattered. They didn't know everything. I didn't let them read anything I wrote. But I laughed more. Ate lunch in sunlight instead of hiding behind the auditorium. Said no when I wanted to. Learned to listen to my own voice before anyone else's. Some nights, though, the quiet ones, when homework was done and the house was still, I'd open Instagram and search Isla's profile. She hadn't posted in over 4 months. No stories. No tagged photos. Her last post was a group picture from a drama fundraiser. She was smiling but not looking at the camera. I recognized the shirt she was wearing. I'd given it to her once, after she spilled paint on her own. She'd called it her lucky shirt. She still wore it, apparently. But that didn't mean anything anymore. I scrolled through the comments. A few hearts. Miss you here and there. But mostly silence. She wasn't thriving. But she wasn't unraveling either, just existing, like me. There was something heartbreakingly human in that. I closed the app. The next morning, I walked past her in the hallway. Our eyes met, briefly, like a flinch, and then we both looked away. I didn't feel pain, just a hollow kind of knowing. We weren't friends anymore, but we weren't enemies either. We were just girls who once shared a world, and now we didn't. The letter began with her name, Isla. Just that. Written in ink I hadn't used in months, on the first page of a crisp notebook I bought for no other reason than needing to put something somewhere. I hadn't planned on writing her anything, but one afternoon in April, on a warm, silent Sunday when the windows were open and the air smelled like laundry and lilac, I sat down and let my pen start moving. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a demand. It was everything in between. I don't hate you. That was the second line. But I don't trust you either. And I think that's the difference. The words came slowly at first, then in a rush, like water finally breaching a cracked dam. You were my best friend. The kind of best friend who felt stitched into my skin, like I didn't know where I ended and you began. We grew up together in secret corners, attic forts, rooftop sunsets, long texts at 1 a.m. filled with things we couldn't say out loud. You were my safe person. Until you weren't. I wrote about the journal. About the way it felt to see my heart on someone else's screen. About walking through school like I was wearing my own skin inside out. About how every page that once healed me became a source of fear. How I stopped writing, stopped trusting, stopped sleeping, and then I wrote about the rooftop. You said you didn't mean for it to blow up. But you never said you were sorry for taking it in the first place. I think that's the part that hurts the most. Not the leak, not the whispers, not the shame. But the quiet decisions you made without telling me. The ones that said, I can do this, and she'll forgive me. You counted on my silence. And I gave it to you. Maybe because I didn't know what else to do. Maybe because I didn't want to fight you. Or maybe because part of me was still waiting for you to be the girl from the attic. There were parts I crossed out. Things too raw to say even now. But I kept writing. I want you to know that I'm okay now. Not fully healed but standing. I write again. I laugh. I made friends who don't need pieces of me to validate their own story. And I think I'm learning how to love myself without needing someone else to reflect it back. But I still dream about you sometimes. And in the dream, we're 12 again, tying shoelaces around each other's wrists and swearing under flashlight stars that we'll never betray each other. And I always wake up with tears on my pillow. I ended the letter there, no sign off, no name, just a blank space where a signature should have gone, because it wasn't meant to be sent. It was a letter for the version of her that still lived in my memory. The Isla who believed in pacts and promises. The Isla who would have cried if she'd known what future her would become. I folded the letter and slid it into the back of my desk drawer, letting it sit there untouched, somewhere between forgiveness and goodbye. And maybe that was enough. The box had been under my bed for over a year, cardboard faded, edges worn soft by time and dust. Inside the fragments of a friendship I had once built my world around. Photos, receipts, movie stubs, notes in bubbly handwriting, a dried flower from a field trip, and the journal, wrapped in a scarf like it might break if touched too suddenly. I hadn't opened it since sealing it last spring. But that morning, a quiet Saturday with nothing on my schedule, the kind of day that crept slowly and invited reflection, I pulled it out. I sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor, the sun casting pale squares of light across the wood. One by one, I removed each item. A Polaroid from our first sleepover, both of us with toothpaste smeared on our cheeks, grinning like fools. A mixed CD she'd made with our songs, scribbled in Sharpie, even though neither of us owned a CD player anymore. And finally, the journal. I held it for a long time. My fingers traced the cloth cover, felt the familiar worn spine. For a moment, I thought about opening it, reading the words I had once trusted to a friend who no longer existed. But I didn't. I stood up, box in hand, and walked it out to the trash bin. It was heavy. Not in weight, but in history. The kind of heaviness that comes from knowing you've kept something long after it stopped serving you. I lifted the lid. And I paused, not out of hesitation but respect. A farewell. Then I let it go. The lid closed with a soft thud. Final, ordinary, sacred. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumph or sadness, just peace. Later that evening, I took a walk. The spring air was crisp, filled with the scent of cut grass and fresh soil. Kids rode bikes on the sidewalk. A dog barked from a backyard. Life in its simplest rhythm. I walked past Isla's street, not intentionally, just a natural part of my old route. Her house was quiet, lights on, curtains drawn. A new wreath on the door. She might have been inside, or not, it didn't matter. I didn't stop walking, because this wasn't about her anymore. This was about me, choosing peace over pain, memory over mourning, growth over ghosts. And as I turned the corner and stepped into the golden light of sunset, I realized I no longer carried her weight in my chest, just echoes, just lessons, just me. These were stories that show the limits of friendship, how even the deepest bonds can splinter under pressure, silence, and betrayal. I loved Isla. I trusted her in ways I didn't even fully understand until she broke that trust. She didn't hate me. She wasn't cruel. She was just lost. Like I was, for a while. But not all friendships are meant to last. Some are meant to shape us, to teach us what we need and what we cannot live without. And sometimes, letting go isn't bitterness. It's a kind of love. A quiet goodbye to someone who was once your everything, and now, just a name in an unsent letter. If you've ever been hurt by someone you called your best friend, you're not alone. Tell me your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more.